other players in this group where Future and Epic are both looking at JonSnow as their way out of this group. If JonSnow was to somehow upset here,
oh wow,
I think, you know, like Future and Epic are just like, well,
we'd slam the door on them.
Yeah, we're just screwed. So
well, Epic's already screwed. He's out.
Yeah,
but Future perhaps
yeah,
clawing at the shoulders of Epic.
Like, please give me that rematch. I would really like that. So much more than playing against Neeb. And speaking of, we are loaded into our first map of our winners match here, WCS America Challenger. In the northeast position, we have our blue Protoss player. He represents freedom and all of the great things in the United States as he goes and kicks butt at foreign tournaments. He is Neeb. He faces off against the Red Zerg player in the southwest, JonSnow, who did show a bit of mortality against Future in their series. Was very close to losing that third game as well.
I mean, he trails 0-1, and then, like you said, very close in the third game. But there was even moments in the second game there where it was, oh no, that was the bunker bust. Never mind. No, it was game 3 that was looking really close. But yeah, so here we have him challenging Neeb. Neeb, who, I guess, so to paint a little bit, just to come back to this subject just one time, Neeb on stage with JonSnow in Montreal or Austin, nah, Neeb's got it 99%. In the comforts of their own home, with Neeb, I think, playing from Korea. Is he playing?
I actually don't know where Neeb is.
I don't know.
Right now.
Either way, playing from home, I give JonSnow a little bit of a bump. I think there's a chance he could make this look a little bit closer at least.
Yeah, I guess we probably have to ask the admin based on what server we're playing on, since I do think they try to balance that, or give at least the player's choice on that.
Even for WCS NA? Would they? Would they though? Would they though? I think they might make him play on NA.
I think the rule is if both players agree. No, no, I mean which game site on NA, because there's like 7 servers on the American region. So you could play US West if both players agreed, you know.
Where's JonSnow? Do you know? Isn't he like Ohio or something weird like that?
I think he is East Coast.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong, but for some reason, he seems too,
too polite and kind to be East Coast. Is that what you're about to say?
What?
Huh? I will say that he has been calling himself JonSnow before it was cool to call yourself JonSnow. Before we.
That's true.
Before that actor.
He's one of those people that reads books before they become TV shows.
He did
weirdo. The little worker dance we just witnessed, the Protoss Zerg mating dance right there. As that probe was like, please, drone, come over. So the expand comes up. It's going to be a Stargate play for Neeb. Are we surprised by this, Jeff and Control Robinson?
No, it's one of the... There are some Protoss that would even tell you that you have to open Stargate, that the other openings are not as viable at all.
Do you, though? What about they got rid of the fast drops? Did that not fix the problem?
No, I mean, that is actually still an opening. That's why I say some Protoss. There's just... Whenever you talk to professional players, they tend to be a little bit polarizing.
They speak in ultimates.
They speak in ultimates. But no, you're absolutely right. Drop Archon, drop DT is still a thing that people do. And in fact, Neeb was one of the players that carried on for a long time. We might see it in this very series. The Adept, unfortunately, does die for nothing here. Gets a little bit of damage done, gets a little bit of scouting, but not much. Sees not the most saturated mineral line. That might be by design. How many workers? No. JonSnow's got 20. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. His Overlords are going to finish up with his link speed. But
speaking of Roddy, by the way, this is a very Roddy-esque wall-in, which is the polite caster way of saying a very crappy wall-in. This is a weird-looking wall.
Yo, I mean, I think I'm realizing now, like, playing Protoss sets you up to become an architect leader in your life, because...
Well, yeah.
I started doing a bit of the off-racing, and I'm like, you know, you place that first building, and you're like, oh, I actually ruined it already. And here we go. He's trying to create, like, this. This is weird.
Well, it's important to note there's, like, conventional architects, like, you know, the standard skyscraper we see. And then there's the guy that designed the Experience Music Project in Seattle and some of these buildings that look like a soft-serve turd that's just been, like, drying there for 2.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what this wall-in is.
That's what this wall-in is like. And then you have other, you know, other gifted architects like Galsey and Printaf. It goes to all sorts of different ways. Haas is one of them.
Haas is one of the...
Very avant-garde.
He's a beautiful... Now, so, not mining gas, a lot of gateways, and charge being upgraded. And it's just got scouted. That is so savage.
That hurts. Seeing that there's
Roachmorn immediately starts.
Seeing no probes on the gas. Well, we were talking about this build earlier, because we did have it busted out against the Terran player.
To the left side of the map. Left of the third. Of the Zerg. Left of the third of the Zerg. Oh, it's a Phoenix.
Yeah.
So
The Robo wasn't done yet, but now the Prism is on the way. It looks like he's still going to go for it.
I guess. I mean, man, if he can if he can make this work, like JonSnow stopped making workers. He's making a sunken, or spine crawler, excuse me. Ugh, I'm sorry, you guys.
That term is like
Oh
20
my
years
God.
old, Jeff.
So it's just gonna be Zealots walking out. It's not even the fastest form of this all-in, really. It's up there though, but it gets scouted well, like halfway into it. JonSnow has to be able to stop this. Or is it believed, and I heard Roddy talking about this on a stream yesterday, that this all-in is believed to be like almost unstoppable. It's very difficult to stop.
Well, you do have one of the best Protoss players that you're going to find on this planet doing it. So let's find out. He's got the
just
Prism
manliness now.
up front. Yeah, Baneliness only just starting. I mean, a lot of people talk about how Roaches can do it, but with this many Zealots, I guess it comes down to a lot of the transfuses, the other positioning. They're going to come in on top of the Queens. 2 of the Roaches get caught on the north side. A couple of the Lings in the back are going to get grabbed. And even this just trying to micro back the weakened Zealots that they can charge in again. As remember, they do that 8 damage on contact. Jeff, maybe you're right.
It looks pretty unstoppable right there.
Can we get Hotline Roddy over here? Because, wow. I mean, Neeb makes this look broken.
That was
So good.
filthy. Absolutely filthy.
This is dirty. We do have a shower here at the studio. Thank God for that.
I think there was like the beginnings of some ideas that really could have worked. Like if you wall in that ramp. What's really hard about that for a Zerg player though is you're like, okay, I wall in my ramp, but then he crushes my third. The Protoss is not mining gas, and they're really all in on this, so that's where you kind of make the logic of like, no, you lose your third, but you get Roaches, and Roaches are going to become very powerful because it's just Zealots. But that's really hard math. That's a really scary spot for the Zerg. He didn't wall in the ramp. There is no Banelings. Roaches are the answer, but at that time, there's just not enough. That's brutal. Absolutely sad.
That was painful to watch. He scouted it pretty far in advance. He got the good opportunity to let some of the Lings slip by. He tried to stop him or slow him down in the middle of the map, but
it was painful for you, but for me it was like, is it Avatar? Well, now I'm getting into the real deep end.
Here we go.
Just any,
And
I'm
like,
trying to think of a PG-13 example of what I'm trying to convey. I think it's Avatar, where they stroke the like mine tendrils coming out of the back of their head.
Hollow reference at that point.
There
yeah.
you go. Is that? But do they do that for pleasure?
Oh,
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
We don't know. We know that they connect themselves spiritually with the Kala,
Okay.
but I don't know if they
We've got our next lobby. We're going to
they interweave their hair things.
for
I don't
game
know.
number 2. I'm sorry, Jeff's mic seems to have broken.
What I'm trying to
So
say
we're
is
just
it felt good for me. It felt good.
I'm glad.
That all-in it's a good one.
Being connected to the Kala, you felt the goodness of that victory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There we go. We got there.
Charged Zealots are really fun though. probably one of my favorite things to play with.
They're way up there. So a quick, decisive all-in, and like we were saying, my speculation is the belief is that it's so strong that literally when it gets scouted, Neeb's like, I still think it works. Because it used to be like if you do a proxy DT or a Stargate or something, if it got scouted, you could go forward with it, but a lot of players would like bail out and do something different. Not in this case. Just keep doing it.
All right, we are loading in now to Blackpink for game number 2 here. This is the winner's match of Group A at WCS Challenger. As we get towards the end of our first day, it's been a fun time commentating with you and Fear Dragon and being out here at the Blizzard Arena in Burbank. It's also nice to cast like 3 blocks from where I live. This is really
That must be nice for you.
It is nice, yeah.
Nate, is the all-in so good that you literally do it again?
Why not?
What if it was?
What if Neeb actually really hates Charged Zealots in PvP, and this is his way of trying to get them nerfed?
Oh, wow.
By just killing every single Zerg with this build until they nerf it.
Because Neeb is big on like performative.
that's the thing. When you're, it's like, oh, okay. We have an interesting opening choice here already.
Yeah.
Is this a thing or is he memeing?
I mean, look at how ahead though of the mind game Neeb is. Neeb either does like Nexus first or something else, but he scouts. He's gonna see the early pool, and he already has a forge. So you can actually, depending on the timing of this, you can actually build the Nexus and then the cannon. But Neeb, see now, Neeb's a pure of heart and soul guy, so he's not like me. He doesn't have the cold black knowledge of the timing of when those Lings get there. So he's gonna play it safe. He's gonna go gateway, then cannon, block the hatch, just make sure the Zerg's disrupted a little bit. But
Yeah.
me, Nate, I'll tell you what. When I play StarCraft, I can rush just about every time against Zerg. You can do some dirty things there. Real dirty.
You're a cruel man in control.
To the Zergs, I am.
Yeah.
I have
People
to
like
punish.
you that make me not want to play Zerg.
Yeah, that's fair.
When it's right as the hatch hits that point where you can't cancel it is when the cannons start hitting it and you're like, oh,
yeah.
that being able to time that is an art.
And that's when you're thankful for the chat dialogue between the two players, because usually the Zerg informs you of how they feel. And
Do they?
It's towards the negative side of the spectrum, if you can
Really?
imagine. Yeah.
The Zergs usually aren't too happy with that.
They usually get a little bit chagrined and have a brief conversation with you.
to inform you of their lack of enjoyment about your show.
Yeah, it's usually something involving frustration and anger, and it's weird because they tend to be like the ex-boyfriend of my mom too, or something like that, which is
Wow, that's coincidental.
gets all kinds of complications.
That's coincidental.
Yeah.
So we have the Cybernetics core finishing up. The Zealot's going to come in to try and
That's a
help
lot of
this
links,
wall.
by the way.
Is a lot of Zerglings. If he sees this, he just builds the pylon and blocks the probe out, right? Or I guess he could try to block
Well,
the probe in, but that's risky.
This is JonSnow double dipping. If that probe is not there, he can just go grab a free win for himself. But not only is the probe still there, he's actually chrono boosting out a unit. This Overlord's going to inform him of that as well. Ooh, the probe heads back. Is that Neeb mind gaming though? God, I love this player. It might have been. But that's a lot of links. Speed's about to finish, and for now, well, it's not about to finish, excuse me. It's just, it's about halfway. Baneling Nest there, I think this has got to be a commitment. That's not defensive. You don't do it this way. This is going to be a huge Ling Flood Baneling bust. JonSnow is channeling all of North America's fallen heroes and is going for the deepest of cheese.
Yeah.
This is Gouda.
I think Roddy would correct you and say that it's Gouda.
Gouda, yeah,
Gouda.
you're right.
Gouda.
You're right.
Yeah.
But this is an aged cheese. This is the kind that you're not sure if it smells good or bad. It does taste good.
It's not
at
supposed
times.
to. It's not supposed to be scentless, right?
Right.
That's the type of cheese that it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now Neeb is kind of that god tier player. So, but the unfortunate thing about this decision is these two adepts are so standard, and they're going to show up. There's no drones here. I don't think they got a third scout, so that's the only thing really going for JonSnow. He even recalls them back.
I think he's realizing what's up, right? He's got to.
Oh, that being there's no additional buildings going down. You'd want a shield battery right now. You want a chrono boost out. He's making a fourth adept. That's not the answer. You want something like a sentry, but he is starting to build additional buildings now.
That is a lot of stuff.
But just one pylon. No, I think
She's trying to block. Okay, the adepts are going to see everything.
Hello.
So he has just a handful of seconds to make his reaction. The Banelings are going to slip through. The adept is not actually walled off, so the Banelings get to the probe. They do reach the photon cannon. They're going to take it down, unpowering Warp Gate and that next adept. And JonSnow just gets inside the Neeb's base. Is that it?
Yeah. Almost absolutely, it for sure is. He was doubling down on adepts behind that. He had glaives for the upgrade. Like sometimes if there's a Stargate or something, maybe a couple of oracles can drag this game back in, but nope, not the case. JonSnow reaches into his bag of tricks, and there's a little bit of a weirdness going on here because like I said, Neeb did scout this. I think Neeb should come into this group saying even a player like JonSnow is going to be looking for a cheap victory. But just not enough alarm bells went off. He was going for additional adepts. He was teching down the adept path. He was upgrading armor, by the way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about that. And JonSnow gets the free win.
Weird game. Yeah.
can
He
be.
saw there were no drones at the natural at all. Did he think that the base was just that late that he was like, oh, of course he doesn't have workers?
I think had he not made a beeline for the natural and said, like, shaded the adepts forward, but then gone and checked the thirds and not seen the thirds there, then we're seeing like a wall in like you've never seen in your life. But he didn't do that. So I agree, though. He should have seen the drone count and been like, what's going on here? This is kind of weird, especially with speed. So when the Lings have speed, which he did see, and that's how he lost the adepts, sees a low drone count, you start to go, if it looks and smells like a duck,
It probably,
is a duck.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a chicken, but it's usually a duck.
Could, I mean, if you're not wearing your glasses, it could be like a goose or something, right?
That's what I'm saying. And it could have been.
Yeah.
That's kind of the funny thing for Neeb to go in and play on North America against JonSnow, who's a good player, but still, Neeb's used to training against like the absolute top Europeans and a lot of the Koreans. Maybe JonSnow's just having a moment right now, and that is the drone count at the natural. He's just like,
that's true.
wait till they get into the main. It's one base mute or something. It could get really weird, but that wasn't the case.
It's not Bly, but
Yeah, true.
I feel you. So Catalyst is going to be the deciding map for this best of 3. Pretty straightforward map, right? Yeah. Any thoughts on PvZ on this map?
I think the whole map pool. I would say, make no mistake, it's been one of the better Protoss map pools we've had in a very long time, and I think the confidence and win percentage kind of reflect that. But Catalyst, like you said, straightforward. Yeah, the third base, it's not the most exposed, but it's not the most protected base. It's not a pocket expansion, but we should see a fairly straightforward game here now. I do want to point out, Neeb's keeping that probe back. He's constantly changing things. We saw the probe scout before because he was kind of, I guess, nervous about seeing something weird like an early pool. This time around, though, not the case.
Yeah, that pool doesn't seem to be quite out yet. Well, yeah.
I mean, there isn't a pool. There's just not a probe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the fun thing to keep your eye on with these players. Like, it's 1-1. It is the winner match. The loser of this is not out by any means. In fact, they both probably feel like they were playing a future guy who they feel very confident against. But in a best of 3, or best of 5 or 7, but in this case a 3, you do want to mix it up. You want to change things. You want to take small advantages. You want to keep your opponent guessing. And in this case, for Neeb, it's a different build, but it's also him doing a later probe scout as opposed to an early one to get that little bit of extra mining.
Yeah, so this probe's going to come out now. He's gonna, as you said, he wanted to get that little bit of extra mining. Goes down, start the natural expansion, and the drone is checking for JonSnow. He's looking to see if there is anything hidden around. He passes the probe on its way in as the Nexus is coming in. So Neeb's going to come inside this base, and he's going to see that that spawning pool is not any sort of aggressive timing. What are we looking for in terms of like builds here? Does he do the Stargate? Is Stargate still like the same, like super standard on this map, or?
Well, at this point in time, the world is full of options for him. Probably Stargate, because that is just kind of the standard path to go. That's the safer way to do it. He won in the very straight-up match against JonSnow before. But just in kind of the game, the guessing game, the game of chicken between these two players, I think it's JonSnow that slightly edged him out with a very macro-oriented opening, and he's just going to go for the standard speed links that kind of shut down all non-aerial scouting earlier on. It's a good response to any kind of adept pressure, which we also know Neeb is favored towards.
Yep, and that's he is going to go with the Chrono boost on the adept and rally it straight across the map. So we'll see. It will be a second one following that. Stargate inside of the main base. You already talked about this, and I guess like with the way that the builds have been shaping up, we've seen a good few different transitions that people are taking out of this, like that big charge zealot all in with the prism that we saw earlier, that unstoppable build, as it were, on Eastwatch.
Yeah, that is a route he could take this, or even just not necessarily the all-in version, but just that kind of army comp. The thing that makes Neeb, one of the things, excuse me, that makes Neeb so scary is, unlike a Showtime, who's just very mechanically powerful and just very comfortable in the mid and late game, Neeb is good at all stages of StarCraft and really exploits that. He will all-in you a couple times in a best of 5 even. And nobody calls him cheesy, but it would be kind of understandable if you did, because he does so many cheeses. But he mixes in cheese with strong macro play, and he executes really well. It's a very difficult kind of profile to go up to battle.
And the Adepts get a handful of drones. He does lose one of them as the second one is able to pull out. We have the Oracle finishing, though. The Overlord is going to be able to see this and sees that gateways are being added, but no follow-up tech just yet. And no follow-up unit out of that Stargate just yet either.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see a Phoenix or Void Ray. More often the Phoenix, of course. A little bit of a scouting battle going on in the middle of the map. But as you pointed out, well, just now the Phoenix gets queued up. Some gateways are being dribbled out, but not like a significant number, and now the gas is added at the natural. Another thing to note with Neeb is, unlike other players, he doesn't push the limits on the third base typically. He's not one of those guys that takes like a 3.5 minute third and says, hey, you got to come stop this or do something about it, or I'm just going to be massively ahead. He's the guy that plays safe. He'll take the little bit later third, develop his tech a little bit more, which does put him in that category of not being like super aggressive economically, but it makes him safer against your all-ins or your aggression.
Cleans up the Overlord. His Oracle on the other side of the map wasn't able to get a whole lot done, just 2 drones. But following that Phoenix that we were talking about, he does get another Oracle. So, I mean, we've talked about, or I guess we've seen, Neeb is a player that has no stranger to the old school. We saw a good amount of stasis words, but also just tagging, constantly having vision of the opponent's base. That's like That's really where the utility of the Oracle comes in once you don't have that opportunity to kind of catch the drones early on or units moving between bases. That revelation is so nice for keeping track of the enemy's army.
Yeah, I think at least for the non-Korean scene, he's been one of the kind of forefathers of showing off that the Oracle has more to offer than just picking off drones, excuse me. As this Adept Force makes its way in here, it's not a supported one. There's no Warp Prism behind it. There's no pylon, no significant numbers. He's just kind of poking and prodding, and with this aggression, he can pretty reliably do some damage here even. He's going to jump on top of those queens. One goes down almost immediately. The other two get picked up. Or one of them gets picked up, excuse me. He's shading forward. He's actually getting a lot of damage done here. And
those Oracles really doing a great job supporting this attack.
Jeez. He might, like, accidentally, I was going to say end the game, but so many Lings are coming out that that's looking to be less the case. But he's doing so much damage that he might as well. You'll see Neeb is up 20+ supply already.
He actually cleans up all of the queens, all of the Lings, and the next wave of Lings is going to come out, but there goes your ability to transfuse. He just has 37 drones, and now the Lings that are coming out. Meanwhile, during this, Neeb, of course, was able to get that third base.
That's huge. And Nate, you were touching on this, but I'll just kind of flush it out. By killing the queens and forcing so many Lings, Lings are hugely supply expensive in that they take up so much larva for so little. Well, getting these sentries would be really nice, but it looks like the space will not be provided. So with the queens dying and these Lings coming out, JonSnow finds himself in a terrible position. He was 20 supply down. It's now looking like more 30+. And as Nate pointed out, with that third going down unmolested, this is getting from a bad situation to worse. It could get pretty deadly here for JonSnow quick.
Yep, and Immortals are coming out, so really beefing up the army against any other sort of quick assault that you would try to do. Adding in charge and +1 attack will give you all the power that you need against any of these cheap early tech units. As a Baneling Nest and an Evolution Chamber get started behind that Hydralisk upgrade.
Yeah, he's just going to kind of maintain the course, I guess.
Just get +1 in charge and kill him? Like, what does JonSnow do?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It puts you in this spot where, and not to get too historical on ourselves, but like a player in the past, like Idra, would have just left right there, because in his mind, you're so far behind that can you come back? Yes. But when you're facing a player like a Neeb who's so high up in that food chain, the likelihood of him making the big enough mistake for you to come back is really, really unlikely. Now, it's not impossible, so JonSnow is going to fight it out, but to your point, Nate, I'm not seeing it. The Warp Prism's coming out. It looks like Neeb just wants to end this one.
Yep, he's just waiting for that charge, +1, Prism, and he'll have
41
all the
army supply to 13, by the way.
With the rest of those gateways coming out, yeah. When you see the Immortals shoot, you're just like, huh. So that's what we've got going on over here. And Neeb's even going to take a 4th base. He's like, well, I mean, if this attack fails, I'll have another base, whatever. If you like somehow barely survive, I won't have nothing behind it.
Yeah. And the Protoss mechanic as an army makes this a really tough situation for the Zerg, where he can show up with this army, and JonSnow has to treat this like a full-on attack that he has to respect. But like you said, behind that, he's taking a 4th. And then with the recall mechanic, if the situation does get dicey, drop a couple of force fields, recall back, and no harm done to you. Whereas the Zerg expelled like all their resources to try and get the army together to deal with this. But as we can see with Neeb, it's not a fake. He's reinforcing it. The Warp Prism's right there.
That's it's quite the army.
Yeah.
And on the other side,
30 supply.
I'm like, is there an army?
There's some Hydras smothered, or like they're just scattered around. They're not in a position to take a fight. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
If they're at the top of this ramp with like a huge concave of Banelings and Hydra or something like that, maybe we'd go, okay, I can see where he does survive this, but I'm not seeing it.
It's 75 army supply to 36.
He's making drones still. I don't think he, yeah. JonSnow in this case literally doesn't know, not just nothing, he just doesn't know about this. This is here.
Yep, and this army, he doesn't have anything that's going to be able to stop this. Neeb moves up the ramp. He's going to attack into this 3rd base and will absolutely obliterate it. Now the Warp Prism in the back kind of gets caught, but not really.
Yeah. It's like it's a little kitten catch. Oh, shoot.
You grabbed my paw.
And that's it.
Takes the 2-1.
Yeah, in convincing fashion. The one game was kind of it's funny because a 2-1 stat line, you're like, oh, it was a close series. And it's like, eh. No, the 2 wins were pretty dominant, and the 1 loss was a little bit of a gotcha, which I liked from JonSnow. In fact, I kind of would have liked more of that, because the other 2 games were him. I mean, 1 was that all-in from Neeb, so I almost want to just not count that. This game was JonSnow, like, accidentally dying. It's like 7 Adepts showed up, and they're backed by fantastic air unit play, but still, he had, I think it was 3 or 4 queens and like 6 Lings, and then he had to make responsive Lings just to survive it. So it was a very bad situation for him.
Yep, that's a tough way to go. I can't really say that You know, like Neeb comes into this group as the big favorite. So JonSnow
Into
is
the round of 8.
he's going to get that rematch against Future, and we're going to see if he can maintain his composure.
Yeah.
Future did come very close to knocking him out.
It's one of the best years of the
for-
day.
Potential for a big upset to finish us off, guys. We're going to get to that match next. You're watching WCS NA Challenger. We'll be right back.